Humans are remarkable creatures. For tens of thousands of years, we have faced challenges, hunger, disease, uncertainty, and yet we survived, evolved, and thrived. Today, the threats may no longer be physical in the same way, but they are no less real. Stress has become a silent epidemic, quietly shaping our minds, our bodies, and our societies. As we step into 2026, we face a choice: to continue allowing stress to control our lives, or to reclaim the clarity, freedom, and focus that is our birthright as human beings. Today, we will explore not just how to reduce stress, but how to transform the very way we perceive it, so that 2026 can be the year we finally live without its invisible chains. Humans have always lived under pressure, though the sources of that pressure have shifted dramatically over time. In the earliest days, our ancestors confronted immediate threats: predators in the grasslands, famine, disease, and the unforgiving forces of nature. These were tangible, concrete dangers, and the human body and mind evolved intricate mechanisms to respond to them. The surge of adrenaline, the sharpening of senses, the ability to make rapid decisions, all these responses were designed to save lives in moments of crisis. Yet, as our societies grew more complex, the threats became less visible, less tangible, and more abstract. In the modern era, we rarely face the immediate danger of a predator, yet the biochemical responses of our bodies remain wired to interpret pressures as life or death situations. Emails, deadlines, social expectations, financial worries, the relentless rhythm of the digital age, all these have become the new predators, and our bodies react in ways that were once vital for survival but now often destructive. Stress is no longer a response to a saber-toothed tiger. It is a response to an overflowing inbox, to the judgment of strangers online, to the pressure of constant comparison, to the subtle anxieties embedded in the social structures we inhabit. The ancient neurological pathways that evolved to protect us are now being triggered by phenomena that are not immediately life-threatening, yet our minds and bodies cannot distinguish between existential danger and social, economic, or informational pressures. Understanding stress requires understanding history. It requires tracing the journey of humanity from the small, tight-knit communities of early Homo sapiens, where survival depended on collaboration, cooperation, and direct engagement with the environment, to the sprawling metropolises of today, where our social networks have expanded but our sense of belonging and personal control has often diminished. In small groups, humans could directly influence outcomes and manage risks. Today, we are interconnected in ways unimaginable a century ago, yet the consequences of our actions often feel invisible and uncontrollable. Stress, therefore, is not just a personal problem, it is a historical and social phenomenon. It is the result of living in a world that our bodies were not fully designed to navigate. A world in which information moves faster than comprehension, and where choices multiply far beyond the capacity of our attentional systems. Cognitive scientists have long noted that the human mind is a product of evolutionary trade-offs. We are capable of incredible foresight, imagination, and creativity, yet the same faculties can generate anxiety about futures that may never materialize. We can simulate multiple outcomes, analyze countless scenarios, and anticipate potential threats. But this capacity comes at a cost: the perpetual activation of our stress responses. Unlike our ancestors who faced dangers that could be addressed immediately through action, modern stressors are often intangible. We may worry about hypothetical outcomes, about events that lie weeks, months, or years in the future. Our brains cannot easily distinguish between an imminent danger and a possible one that exists only in imagination. This is why stress today can feel inescapable. It is not necessarily the objective challenges of life that overwhelm us, but our internalized anticipation, were mental simulations of catastrophe. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala, the region of the brain responsible for detecting threat, is highly sensitive to uncertainty. Uncertainty, other than actual harm, is a primary trigger for stress. And in 2026, uncertainty is abundant. Geopolitical instability, technological disruption, economic volatility, climate change, and the subtle pressures of social comparison in digital spaces. All these create a continuous background hum of anxiety. Moreover, the societal narrative we inherit often amplifies stress. From childhood, we are taught to measure our worth against performance, achievement, and productivity. The implicit message is that failure is dangerous, that we are only valuable if we meet ever-escalating standards. Historically, failure could have tangible consequences, but today the consequences are more psychological than material, yet no less severe. A person may survive economically, yet feel trapped, inadequate, or anxious. Cultural structures, media and education systems reinforce the sense that stress is unavoidable, even natural, and that our capacity to manage it is limited. Yet science increasingly shows that stress is not an immutable force. While our bodies react instinctively, the mind can reframe experiences, regulate attention, and alter perception in ways that mitigate stress. Evolution has given us the tools to survive external threats, and it has also given us the capacity for self-awareness, reflection, and intervention. Understanding the roots of stress is the first step toward reclaiming control. When we recognize that the fight or flight response is a vestige of our evolutionary history, we can begin to question whether it is appropriate in our modern context. When we understand that much of our stress derives from abstract, social, or informational pressures rather than immediate physical danger, we can develop strategies that target the real sources rather than reacting instinctively. This process begins with observation. Humans are remarkable in their capacity to notice patterns and causes. By paying attention to the situations that trigger stress, by documenting the moments when our bodies tighten, our minds race, and our hearts accelerate, we can begin to disentangle the automatic responses from the genuine challenges that require action. Historical perspective provides additional clarity. In the past, life expectancy was short, infant mortality high, and disease rampant. Stress may have been episodic and tied to tangible crises. Today, we live longer, healthier lives, yet we experience chronic stress, a sustained activation of physiological systems that were designed for brief, intense episodes. Chronic stress is corrosive. It impairs memory, reduces immune function, increases cardiovascular risk, and undermines emotional regulation. In other words, the very mechanisms that once ensured survival now threaten our well-being. Understanding stress also requires understanding the role of culture and technology. The information revolution has transformed the way we perceive the world. Social media, 24-hour news cycles, and instant communication create the illusion that we must constantly monitor events, evaluate opinions, and manage impressions. The human brain evolved in an environment of scarcity, limited information, slow communication, and tightly bounded social networks. Today, we are inundated with signals, opinions, and judgments, each demanding attention and eliciting emotional responses. Our attention is fragmented, our minds overextended, and our stress levels perpetually elevated. Furthermore, the economy of attention creates incentives for amplifying fear and anxiety. Clicks, engagement, and virality are often generated by content that triggers strong emotional responses, including stress. The systems we inhabit are designed not for our calm, but for our engagement, which frequently comes at the cost of our mental equilibrium. To counteract this, humans must cultivate mindfulness and intentionality. recognizing that many stressors are manufactured by society, by technology, by cultural expectation, is liberating. Once we perceive the distinction between real threats and simulated pressures, we gain agency. We can choose where to direct attention, how to interpret events, and which responses are appropriate. The challenge is not to eliminate stress entirely, that is impossible, but to differentiate between adaptive stress and maladaptive stress. Adaptive stress motivates action, focus, and learning. Maladaptive stress overwhelms, paralyzes, and erodes well-being. The distinction is subtle but critical. Historical analysis further illuminates the modern predicament. Societies that valued communal support, ritual, and structured social roles often provided frameworks for managing stress. Collective identity, shared narrative, and predictable social rhythms served as buffers. In contrast, contemporary life often emphasizes individualism, personal responsibility, and constant self-optimization, creating conditions in which stress proliferates. By studying the evolution of human social structures, we can identify elements that mitigate stress: meaningful connection, ritualized practice, purpose-driven activity, and predictable routines. These elements can be reintroduced into our lives even within the modern context, offering a path toward balance. Biology and psychology intersect in revealing ways. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis governs the release of cortisol, the primary stress hormone. Prolonged activation of this system disrupts sleep, memory, and emotional regulation. Yet, interventions ranging from controlled breathing and physical activity to cognitive reframing and meditation can modulate these pathways, demonstrating that awareness and practice can reshape physiology. In essence, understanding stress is both intellectual and practical. It is a recognition of evolutionary history, societal influence, and neurological architecture. It is an acknowledgement that the pressures we face are often novel, yet our responses are ancient. By combining historical perspective, scientific insight, and self-observation, humans can transform their relationship with stress. The path begins with recognition, identifying the triggers, distinguishing between external realities and internal simulations, and cultivating the capacity to respond rather than react. As we consider the landscape of 2026, the stakes are particularly high. Global challenges, from climate instability to economic uncertainty, from technological disruption to social fragmentation, create a complex web of pressures. Individual resilience is insufficient on its own. Collective understanding, systemic reform, and cultural evolution are also necessary. Yet individual action remains crucial. By understanding the roots of stress, individuals can implement strategies that reduce chronic activation, enhance cognitive clarity, and preserve emotional health. Awareness itself is a form of empowerment. By tracing the origins of stress from evolutionary imperatives to modern social constructs, we gain a map for intervention. When we perceive that our physiological reactions are echoes of ancient survival mechanisms, we can separate them from the demands of contemporary life. When we recognize that many societal pressures are contingent, not absolute, we can allocate attention strategically. When we see that chronic stress is a product of environment and cognition rather than inevitability, we can cultivate practices that mitigate its impact. The interplay of mind, body, society, and history reveals the complexity, of stress, but also the pathways toward relief. Techniques rooted in mindfulness, cognitive restructuring, physical regulation, and social connection are all informed by understanding the underlying causes of stress. The modern human equipped with knowledge, reflection, and intentional practice, is capable of navigating these pressures with a degree of autonomy unimaginable to our ancestors. Yet the first step remains comprehension, knowing why stress arises, how it is triggered, and what consequences it imposes. Only then can we engage in deliberate action, reshaping our habits, environments, and perceptions. The challenge is profound, but so is the opportunity. By understanding stress in its full context, biological, historical, psychological, and social, we are equipped not merely to survive, but to thrive. This requires embracing complexity, observing internal patterns, and applying interventions consistently. It requires challenging cultural narratives that glorify overwork, distraction, and constant worry. It requires reclaiming the agency that humans have always exercised in small groups and in societies to shape their experience of the world and their inner lives. In the pursuit of a life without stress, knowledge alone is insufficient. Understanding the causes of tension and anxiety lays the foundation, but it does not construct the bridge to calm. Human beings, with minds shaped over millennia by survival imperatives, must engage not only in comprehension, but in deliberate practice. The body and mind are deeply intertwined, and the physiological systems that evolve to respond to immediate threats must be trained to recognize when action is unnecessary. Practical strategies for reclaiming calm are therefore not merely techniques, they are a form of self-reclamation, an effort to realign our ancient biological machinery with the realities of a world transformed by technology, social complexity, and constant information flow. Consider attention, the currency of the mind. Our capacity to focus is limited. It evolved to serve a hunter-gatherer existence in which detecting the rustle of a predator in the grass could determine life or death. Today, that same attentional system is relentlessly bombarded with notifications, news updates, social media alerts, and the constant demands of work and relationships. The human brain is, by its design, ill-equipped to multitask across the modern deluge of stimuli, yet our culture demands it. One of the most profound strategies to reclaim calm is the deliberate management of attention. To recognize that attention is a finite resource is to acknowledge that not every stimulus requires a response, that not every worry requires rumination, that not every expectation deserves energy. Techniques such as focused meditation, deliberate deep work sessions, and intentional periods of digital silence are more than modern wellness trends. They are tools that retrain neural circuits, enabling the prefrontal cortex to exert control over the amygdala and modulate stress responses. The practice of mindfulness, in particular, exemplifies this approach. By attending fully to the present moment without judgment, humans can break the cycle of anticipatory anxiety, the mental rehearsal of hypothetical threats that fuels chronic stress. Neuroscience demonstrates that even brief periods of consistent mindfulness practice can reduce amygdala reactivity, strengthen connectivity in brain regions associated with executive function, and improve emotional regulation. These changes are not abstract. They manifest in reduced cortisol levels, improved sleep quality, enhanced decision-making, and greater resilience to external pressures. Yet attention is not solely an individual problem, it is also a societal challenge. The structures of contemporary life often compete for focus, from workplaces that valorize constant availability to digital platforms designed to maximize engagement. To reclaim calm, individuals must therefore establish boundaries, creating environments in which focus is protected, interruptions are minimized, and cognitive bandwidth is preserved. Physical embodiment also plays a central role in managing stress. The human body evolved to move, to expend energy in response to threats, to engage in sustained physical activity as a primary mode of survival. In modern life, this movement is often reduced to episodic exercise or incidental motion. Yet, the physiological systems that regulate stress, cortisol production, heart rate variability, and neuroplasticity are deeply influenced by bodily activity. Regular aerobic exercise, resistance training, and even structured walking routines act as natural regulators of stress hormones, improving mood, enhancing cognitive function, and fostering a sense of mastery over the self. Breathing, too, is a mechanism through which calm can be cultivated. The autonomic nervous system, responsible for balancing sympathetic activation and parasympathetic relaxation, responds directly to patterns of respiration. Deep, slow, and controlled breathing signals safety to the body, reduces heart rate, and modulates the release of stress hormones. Techniques that focus on conscious breathing, such as diaphragmatic breathing, box breathing, and alternate nostril exercises, provide immediate physiological relief while also cultivating long-term resilience. Yet practical strategies extend beyond the individual into the social domain. Humans are inherently social creatures. Evolutionary history has embedded the necessity of connection into the very architecture of our brains. Isolation, chronic loneliness, and weak social bonds are significant predictors of stress, depression, and physical illness. Conversely, meaningful relationships, supportive communities, and shared experiences act as buffers, providing both emotional and practical resources to mitigate pressure. Establishing networks of trust, investing time in relationships, and creating rituals of social support are therefore central strategies for cultivating calm. These interactions need not be vast or numerous. Small, consistent, and intentional connections are more powerful than extensive but shallow networks. Purpose and narrative are equally vital. Across history, human societies have provided frameworks of meaning through stories, rituals, and shared goals. Individuals who perceive their actions as contributing to a larger purpose are more resilient in the face of adversity. Stress is often amplified when life feels fragmented, when daily activities appear disconnected, and when effort seems futile. Reclaiming calm requires identifying and cultivating purpose, whether through career, community service, creative expression, or personal development. The narrative one constructs about their own life functions as a cognitive scaffold, stabilizing attention, regulating emotion, and providing a lens through which challenges are interpreted. Technology, though a source of modern stress, can also be harnessed as a tool for calm when used intentionally. Digital platforms can facilitate mindfulness apps, guided meditations, exercise tracking, social connection, and learning opportunities. The key is intentionality, using technology deliberately to support focus and well-being rather than allowing it to dictate attention and emotional states. Environmental design further influences the capacity to maintain calm. Spaces that incorporate natural light, greenery, minimal distractions, and ergonomic considerations foster mental clarity and reduce cognitive load. Our ancestors lived in environments in which sensory input was balanced, rhythms were natural, and spaces were conducive to both alertness and rest. Modern architecture, office design, and urban density often disrupt these patterns, and deliberate creation of environments that approximate natural rhythms and reduce sensory overload can be profoundly therapeutic. Time itself is a resource that requires conscious management. The perception of time scarcity drives chronic stress, as individuals feel perpetually behind or unable to accomplish necessary tasks. Strategic structuring of schedules, prioritization of meaningful work, deliberate periods of rest, and adherence to circadian rhythms enable the alignment of human activity with natural biological cycles. This alignment reduces cognitive friction, improves mood, and supports sustained focus. Nutrition and the regulation of energy intake are equally important. The human brain is metabolically demanding, and fluctuations in blood sugar, hydration, and nutrient availability impact both cognitive performance and stress reactivity. Diets rich in whole foods, balanced macronutrients, and adequate hydration support stable energy levels, enhance emotional regulation, and reduce the physiological burden of stress. Sleep is perhaps the most underappreciated yet critical strategy. Humans evolved to experience consistent circadian patterns, with sleep serving as a period of neural restoration, memory consolidation, and hormonal regulation. Chronic sleep deprivation amplifies cortisol, impairs prefrontal regulation of emotion, and diminishes resilience. Prioritizing sufficient and consistent sleep is foundational to any practical strategy for calm. Cognitive reframing, a psychological intervention, provides another avenue to reclaim focus. Humans possess the capacity to reinterpret events, assign meaning, and shift perspective. Stress often arises not from objective events themselves, but from the mental narratives constructed around them. By consciously reframing challenges as opportunities for growth, learning, or adaptation, individuals can reduce the intensity of stress responses and enhance problem-solving capacities. Habit formation is central to the sustainability of these strategies. One-off interventions provide temporary relief, but lasting change requires the integration of stress-mitigating practices into daily life. The neuroscience of habit formation demonstrates that repeated behavior reshapes neural pathways, creating automatic patterns that support calm and focus. Ritualized practice, whether through morning routines, exercise regimens, meditation sessions, or work habits, leverages the brain's natural tendency toward automation to reduce cognitive load and buffer against stress. Curiosity and learning function as powerful antidotes to anxiety. Humans evolved as inquisitive beings, with survival depending on exploration, problem-solving, and adaptation. Engaging the mind in creative, intellectual, or skill-based pursuits shifts focus from reactive anxiety to proactive engagement. This redirection not only enhances competence and mastery, but also stimulates neuroplasticity, fostering resilience in the face of uncertainty. The integration of movement, attention management, social connection, purpose, nutrition, sleep, cognitive reframing,